There are few filmmakers who left a mark on this world as big as David Lynch did. And when he passed on earlier this year, it left this massive void in like a lot of us. So I figured it was high time to go rewatch his filmography and do a dead last, and we can just celebrate these movies together. And it made for one of the most amazing watch throughs that I've done in recent history. And I mean, look at these movies. I included all of his feature film work, so all of that is included, going back to his first film all the way up to his last. Although I didn't include short films or TV work, and much like with John Waters, this was a list in which I had no clue how it was going to go. And as usual, I sent this roster out to my patrons, and it led to some great discussion about them. And 35 people answered the call. And like always, what they did was they put their favorite film in number 1, and that was worth 1 point. Their second favorite in number 2, and that's 2 points, and so on down the list until their least favorite was put in dead last. Here worth 10 points. I then added all those points up, and the best possible score that a film could have would be 35 points, with the worst score being 350. So now, let's jump into the Black Lodge and remember that each person's ranking is a symbol of their individuality and their belief in personal freedom.
I've got a surprise for you. Something interesting I would like to show you.
And coming in at dead last here, and I should point out that I personally think that all of these films are pretty great, but landing with 298 points, it's Lynch's final film, Inland Empire. This one was put in dead last 16 times, so 46% of the lists had this. Here, almost half of them, and the best score that it got was second place. And fun fact, this is the only film we're going to talk about today that not a single person put in their first place spot. And I was one of those that put it in the dead last spot, but there's still a lot to like with this one. Like, first off, I want to point out how different this feels from any other Lynch film, mainly due to the aspects of how it was done. It was shot without a finished script, done on a store-bought camcorder, and just very much different tech-wise. But it's also unique in the way that it feels. I'm not sure if it's because of that script thing, but most of Lynch's movies have characters that have like this distinct, not quite human way of talking. It's one of his trademarks, but it's not present here, except at times. The characters here have a more human way of speaking, and then that's probably due to the lack of a set script and the more improvisational nature of the dialogue. It feels more like how these actors talk than characters in a Lynchian world. But it still has the Lynch flair to it, so it feels like this David Lynch environment without those David Lynch characters. But it's just too dense. Maybe at less than 2 hours I would feel better about all this, but as it is, it's 3 hours long, and it's too abstract. Like, there's aspects of it that feel closer in feel to something like Mulholland Drive, in the idea that you're seeing a warped version of reality through an untrustworthy narrator, and I found that interesting, but then it just keeps going and going. I really think that this same level of experimentation, at around the same runtime of his other works, would have resulted in a film that I enjoyed a lot more. But as it is, this is just one that I don't enjoy watching, solely due to the length. There was a pretty big drop in points as we go to our number 9 film here, because it's landing all the way down at 236 points, a full 62 fewer, and now we have Wild at Heart. This was put in dead last 5 times for 14% of the lists, but it was put in first place 1 time as well. And this is one that I struggled with, but I eventually put it in 7th. When I was younger and this came out, I loved it. I was really into the whole vibe it was putting down, but as time has gone on, each time I've seen it, I've enjoyed it less and less. I suppose how you rate this one might rely on your opinion on Nick Cage, because this movie is the Nick Cage show. And look, for me, That's marks against it. I want to see a Lynch film, and his performance just feels so far removed from everything else that it's hard to move past it. And that makes a problem for me because I just don't find the character of Sailor likable. At least the way Cage is portraying him. So it becomes a distraction. Like instead of a Lynch film, I get a Cage film. I guess also, call me crazy on this, but this feels the least like the rest of his films to me. Like there's a sort of campiness here that comes off as less sincere, and it's just never felt as honest as the rest of them to me. That's not to say that it's not an incredibly well-told story, though, and I should clarify that it's one that I still think is a really good movie and enjoyable to watch. It's also weird that there's a scene with a bank robbery in which afterwards a dog takes off with a body part in his mouth, and we just watched the John Waters movies, and in Female Trouble there's a very similar scene, although it ain't no hand.
I'm making my lunch!
With our number 8 movie, this was our first close call. In this movie and Wild at Heart, we're switching back and forth quite a bit along the way. And at 232 points, only 4 points down, we're looking at Dune. This is one that people were the most split on since it was put in dead last 8 times, 23% of the lists, but also in first place 3 times for 9% of them. And I've got this one pretty low since I have it in 9th place, but with that in mind, I'll still defend this movie to its detractors. I mean, call me crazy, but I kinda prefer this to the new ones. Like, sure, those ones are better movies, story-wise, and I've never read the books, but I guess they're more true to the source. But this version just has more panache and style. I find the new takes to be a little sterile feeling and maybe too dry, because desert. And here, Lynch is able to make this world feel alive, and these characters feel distinct. And honestly, your enjoyment of this film may kind of rely on which version of it that you're watching, since the interpretations are wildly different. And I'll also admit that my appreciation of this one may be nostalgia-based, but I enjoy watching it. Like, clearly, I can recognize that it's flawed, hence my 9th place positioning, because it's certainly a bit overdone and doesn't make much sense, mainly down to pacing issues. Again, I've not read the books, but it seems like he was just trying to jam as much story as he possibly could in this limited time frame, which led to a rushed and condensed story. Moving down to our number 7 film here, and this wasn't as close since it dropped down 11 points to 221, and it's another one that's a little out of character since now we have The Straight Story. This was put in dead last 3 times for 9% of the rankings, but it was also put in first place twice. And I ended up putting this in 8th place, and this is just such a hard movie for me to rank here because it's such a charming and dazzling and human film, but it's just so out of the ordinary for Lynch. The story here is that he took this project on as the script was the work of his frequent collaborator, Mary Sweeney, and she showed him the script, and he felt such emotion while reading it that he felt that he needed to be the one to bring that to the screen. And let me say, I think that Lynch doesn't get credit for putting emotions in his films, since Elephant Man and Fire Walk With Me are both chock full of the feels, but this is quite different. Those films have a ton of emotion due to being more tragic and eliciting sorrow from the viewers, but not here. This is a more heartfelt emotion and more relatable human moments. But the funny thing is that it still feels like it fits within his worlds. Like, because of the way that people talk and interact with each other, it seems like this could take place in the same universe as his other ones. Just like a lot more quiet side of it. That all being said, on the other hand, this isn't really what I'm looking for from one of his films. Like, when I want to watch a David Lynch film, I'm looking for something specific, and this isn't it. Like, even though I think it's a fantastic film, and one that I think is powerful, but it just doesn't stick with me like some of the other ones do, so I had to slot it down a bit for that. But it is a great flick and one that you should see if you haven't already.
I ate a Braun Schweiger. Yeah.
Coming up on our number 6 movie now, and this one had a modest drop down to 206 points, 15 less than the straight story, and now we have one of the more textbook Lynch films with Lost Highway. It did get 2 dead last votes, but was put in first place an equal amount of time, so there was an even split here. And I put this one exactly where it landed because I have this in 6th. And look, the fact that this movie opens with David heckin' Bowie singing gets it points in my book. Like, sure, Fire Walk With Me put him in the actual film, but this is just as good. But going chronologically, I feel like this is the first film in his whole roster that just didn't click with me story-wise. There were ones that I had issues with other factors like Wild at Heart and Dune, but this was the first in which I thought that the overall story was the biggest issue. It's a jigsaw puzzle, kind of like Twin Peaks, but it's far more dreamlike and surreal, although it's less surreal than Eraserhead, but it just didn't connect with the narrative here. It's still a fun ride visually, and I enjoy it, but I just don't have that investment in the characters or story that I do with something like Twin Peaks. And part of that comes down to Bill Pullman and Balthazar Getty, because I'm not really impressed with either of them. And I know that Lynch tends to like these leads that are sort of blank slates, which is why he puts McLaughlin in there like so many times, but these guys just aren't pulling it off as well. And I mentioned it earlier, but I feel the need to stress it again. But this soundtrack absolutely boosts this one. And it's not just the Bowie. Every track here is a banger. And the songs are very well integrated into the film. But this is another weird link up with the John Waters roster because Mink Stoll has a voice cameo in this. We're going into the top half of this list now as we go on to our number 5 movie. And this was a bit of a bigger drop in points since we go to 173, 33 fewer than Lost Highway. And our first entry with less than 200 in total, and it's his first feature film, Eraserhead. This did get a single dead last vote, but was also put into first place 4 times for 11% of the lists. And I have this one again, right where it lays, since I put it into 5th place on my list. And how do you even discuss this one? It's just such a bizarre roller coaster of confusion. But I'll tell you this movie's letting you know its intentions from minute 1. It's right up front with you, telling you that you're in for a dense, mind-blowing experience that's chock full of insane visuals. And after that first minute or so, it just keeps doing it. Like, for the whole runtime. And look, there's no way to make this into some sort of regular movie experience. This is 100% an art piece and experimental work. It's not all going to make sense, and nothing really feels literal, but it's just beautiful in this frightening way. But I've never watched this film and tried to parse what it means. I'm not convinced that there is a significant meaning to all of it, although I get the general theme of what it's saying. However, it's a film that feels like it doesn't need to be understood to be enjoyed. Like, I don't need to know what every little thing is intended to mean here. Sometimes you just want to enjoy art for the art of it. And that's where I stand with Eraserhead. Plus, the sound work is outstanding, and for as much as the visuals are talked about, I feel like the audio needs to be discussed as well. I would say that the sound work is a huge chunk of creating this overall atmosphere that we're getting here, and it's keeping you disconcerted the entire time. But also, as a debut feature film, holy crap, is Lynch showing a strong sense of confidence and talent. And it was so clear from this early work that he was going to be an extraordinary storyteller.
Oh, you are sick.
Alright, this was another close one because our number 4 film was only 2 points away, and it's landing in this spot with 171 points. And now let's go to the property that Lynch is likely most connected with, and it's Twin Peaks: Fire Walk With Me. This is the first film on the list to not get any dead last votes, and the worst score that it got was 9th place, which it got 3 times here, but it was also put into first place 3 times for 9% of the rankings. And I surprised myself with this one because I put this one in first place, and that was something I wasn't expecting to do when I sat down to write this list. The interesting thing to consider while putting this one on a ranking is that it's tied to the TV show. And when I first saw this in the theaters, it was after watching the show. So I saw this as an extension of that. And I remember being fairly disappointed. Like since the show ended in a cliffhanger, I was counting on the film to give me some resolution. And of course, it didn't give it to me. Now, I haven't seen this for quite a while, and it's been a long time since I've seen the show, so I'm watching this as a feature film this time around. Like, it's been said that the intention was to make something that was sort of freestanding, and it somewhat succeeds. Like, honestly, if it weren't for the stuff in the beginning with Agents Desmond and Stanley, I feel like that aspect might have been perfect. Those elements, since they don't much tie into the story with Laura, at least in the context of the movie, as opposed to the greater storyline present in the entire narrative, don't quite gel. Their parts fit in with the bigger whole in the context of the show as opposed to a standalone film. There's also some show characters who just sort of appear out of the blue here, and if you're not up on the series, their inclusion is a little odd. But it's just such a fascinating movie, and I also feel like it's the most indicative of his general style. Like, it's odd and mysterious and just leaves you with so many questions, but it's still a mostly direct story that anyone could watch, even if they'll be scratching their heads afterwards. Going into the top 3 now, and I'll say this, our first place movie was first almost the entire time, and I'm not sure it was any contest, but second and third place was a really hot contest, and these two films battled hard and kept swapping back and forth, but in the end, at number 3, with 138 points, we have The Elephant Man. This was also never put into dead last, but landed in 9th place twice, but was slotted as number 1 7 times for 20% of the lists. And I'm back on track since I put this one in my 3rd place as well. But this would be a number 1 on a whole lot of other lists. This is a fantastic film. Just wonderful. But this movie is just so unbearably sad. I'm told that when I was younger and watched this movie, I just cried and cried and cried for hours afterwards. And now that I'm older, well, I still cried for hours afterwards. But it's also so fascinating and a discussion of intentions. Like, Frederick is upset at the way that John is treated at the freak show and thinks it's horrible and takes him away from it. But then basically just has him on display himself, doing essentially the same thing to him at the hospital. It's also wild that this is only Lynch's second feature film. It feels so confident, and not only is it a strong narrative, but it maintains a large amount of his visual style. And that makeup work by Christopher Tucker is just wow. He didn't really get a lot of recognition. It doesn't have the same cachet as a bunch of the other guys did, but it's kind of sad because it said that his work here was a big factor in the creation of a Best Makeup category for the Oscars. And one was created in the following year, but that was after this one was able to be nominated.
I am not an animal! I am a human being!
And that leaves only 2 movies, and like I said, this was close, and our second place movie landed here with 136 points, only 2 ahead of Elephant Man, and it's gonna be Mulholland Drive. Again, no dead lasts here, but it made 9th place 3 times, and this was put in 1st place 8 times, 23% of the lists, and interestingly enough, the highest number of 1st place ranks. And I had this one a little bit lower than the consensus, but still high, since this was my 4th place spot. And this feels like what he was trying to go for with Lost Highway. Not that that film was unsuccessful in what it was doing, but in my opinion, this is doing a similar kind of thing, but conveying it better. It's this cool story with plenty of surreal moments and bizarre characters, but it comes together in a more satisfying way than Highway does. Sure, it's still confusing and requires some thinking, and even when you do that thinking, it's likely still not all a neat little package, but this is one that you can be like, I think this is what it's about. And you'll probably be around 70% similar to what someone watching it with you would say. But I think that the thing that held this one out of my top 3 is the circumstances of how it came to be. This was originally a TV pilot and could have been another series like Twin Peaks, but they didn't go with it, and Lynch was able to get the rights back and turned it into a feature film instead. And he was able to make it work, for the most part. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that there's elements in there that don't gel with what it turned into and still feel like they were setting up storylines to be carried forward in later episodes. It's not some big sticking point, and it certainly doesn't detract from the movie, but when you're aware of that aspect of it, I feel like it sticks out ever so slightly. One other thing that I'll point out is that the Winky's dumpster scene is one of the greatest, coolest horror moments to be featured in a non-horror feature of all time. And that leaves us just one movie, our top dog here. And this one ran away with it at 114 points, a full 22 less than our number 2 film. And it's, of course, Blue Velvet. Once again, no dead last votes, but it did get a single 9th place spot. And just to note, every single film on this list was either voted dead last or in 9th place. But this is even weirder. It was put in first place 5 times. 14% of the lists. And it's interesting because that's 3 less than the 2nd place film and 2 less than the 3rd place one. So the rankings were just more consistent here. And I was close here too, because this was my 2nd place film. And I guess I contributed to that consistency of being high up, even if it's not in my 1st place. And like I said, this one mostly dominated this top spot. I think within the first 3 or 4 rankings, it's made its way into the number 1 and then just like never left. And it always had a comfortable lead. I think at one point it was down to only being up on Mulholland by 12 points, but then a few more rankings came in and pushed it even further. And it deserves to be up here. It's a great film. And maybe it's because we just watch all the John Waters flicks, but the opening scene in this one gave me vibes of one of his films, with the whole idea is that there's this cookie cutter suburbia that seems idyllic, but then there's this dark side to it all. Oh, and I love that the policeman is just like, oh, hey, teenage boy, you're bringing me this human ear that you found? Well, tag along and come with me while we investigate, instead of just being like, thanks, kid, see ya. And to those bold enough to try, ladies are less impressed by the chicken walk than this movie will make you believe. And look, you don't have to have an appreciation of old film noirs, but if you do, it enhances this movie even more. This is a pitch-perfect tribute to that genre, just pulled into suburbia, and it balances those two things, as well as also feeling like a David Lynch film, all together in one amazing package. But I think the thing that makes this one the number 1 spot is the accessibility and perhaps memeability of it all. This one is weird and very Lynch-like, but also feels mainstream enough that just about anyone can vibe with it. But then there's Hopper. Like I mentioned, that Cage sort of dominates Wild at Heart, and Hopper does the same sort of thing here, but in a less egregious way that feels like it complements the movie more than takes away from it, and every line of his dialogue is just so damn quotable. Amazing films that I had no clue where they land. Let's look at the ranking now, because I have to say I'm pretty happy with this ranking. Like the John Waters list, this is one that I mostly enjoy everything, so there's not any one that I would get angry about being low or being high, even if they're not exactly where I placed them. But let me know where you would place them. Is there any films here that you feel are too low? Any that you feel are too high? Let me know that down below in the comments. And just know, as always, you can help participate and you can contribute to these rankings by going to patreon.com/movietimelines and becoming a patron there. You can be a patron for $1 a month, and you can kind of do what we're doing by ranking up these movies and sending in your totals. It's pretty easy to do. Go go ahead there and do it. Also, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up. If you like the channel, subscribe to it. And if you are a patron, then yeah, your name's going to be right here, because these people are all patrons and they help support this channel and keep it going. And yeah, you guys can too by just coming and watching along. And I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.